Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless University Conversation with myself and Welsh. Today, I'm truly honored to have Joteica Eaddy with myself today. She is the founder and CEO of Full Circle Strategies, an award-winning company that focuses on social impact and political consulting firm. What's truly inspiring is that she's described as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley by Forbes magazine. Let me tell you a little bit about my guest. Her firm, the Social Impact and Consulting Firm, is committed to advancing transformative change and global impact. It's an award-winning strategist and authority in the social impact space. My guest, Joteica, has spearheaded this strategic project for companies spanning from corporate, not-for-profit, technology and government industry, seeking to advance policy, ideas, and change. What's fascinating about her is that she'll be talking about her own journey from coming from a small town of North Carolina in the United States to advancing to politics and owning her own firm in Washington, D.C. She has more than 20 years of experience in policy advocacy. Her hashtag, Win with Black Women, win viral. She started this initiative to put out a voice to help encourage Black women, to support Black women who are leading but never get the support they deserve. So she started this initiative with a group of other women, and the initiative which is out there has been seen by over 500,000 people worldwide. A few things about her is that she's recognized as the 2020 BET Election All-Stars with Money American 2020 History Maker. She's the 40 under 40 Silicon Valley Tech Diversity, Essence Magazine Women to Watch, amongst others. She's won numerous awards for her work, and she wants to also encourage more Black women to take up the bold action to go into tech and not be afraid by what is being shown to the world. I can't wait to talk to her, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Meet my amazing guest, Joteica, as we share her story, and hopefully you get inspired to overcome your pain of trying something new, but do this and find your joy. Meet Joteica. Well, hello everyone again. Welcome to Painless University, a conversation with myself, Anne Welsh. As you had said in my introduction, this interview, it will be one that is truly must watch. It will be special. It will tell you about your journey of pain, but how you could find your joy along the way. Joteica, thank you so much for joining me. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. I'm so excited to join you, Anne. And I love your work. I love just the stories that you tell. And, this notion of from pain to power is so important. And I think we need to talk about it more. So I'm just really excited to join you.
No, I'm really honored to have you because your work is truly amazing. In fact, you're described by Forbes as the Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley. And I thought, wow, that is truly really an honor to have because when you watch Olivia Pope, you know the work she does and how intense it can be. And imagine so your work must be the same. But before we get into all of that, where are you joining me from? And can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Who is Joteica?
Well, I'm joining you from Washington, D.C., and that is really my home base, although my work spans all across the country. And I think to answer the question of who is Joteica Eaddy, I always tell everyone, I am a Black girl that grew up on a dirt road in Johnsonville, South Carolina. It's a town, a tiny little town in South Carolina, population 1,491 people. And it's a little tiny town. It had one red light as I was growing up. We now have three red lights. So we're growing. And I'm really, when I think of who Joteica is, she's evolved over the years. But I think the thing that has remained constant about myself and who I am is I'm a connector. I'm an activist, an advocate, and a strategist, and someone who deeply cares about always ensuring that we take those that are pushed to the margins and put them back to the center.
That's wonderful. You said you grew up in North Carolina and you love your job. Can you just tell us a little bit about your background and how that prepared you for what you do now? Because you're really, really good at it. And it's just amazing how someone who grew up in a little town in North Carolina is so good at what they're doing now. What prepared you for this calling?
Yeah, a lot of what prepared me was growing up in that little tiny town in South Carolina. It was the women around me, particularly my mother and my father and my entire family. I grew up with a mother who told me that I could do and be anything that I wanted to be, and I grew up with a father who always told me, and I didn't fully understand what he was saying until I got older, but he would always say, "You're my horse." And he would always then follow it by saying, if you never win a race, I am always going to bet on you. You're my horse. And now that I'm older, I realize that, that's just my father saying, no matter win, lose, or draw, I'm always rooting for you, that I'm always in your corner. And so growing up with a father that always told me that I was his bet, even if I lost every single race, he was always going to still bet on me. And a mother who told me that I could do and be anything and showed me just the strength and resilience. I grew up with a mother who battled with lupus her entire life and still battles with it, but is a resilient woman who is a community-centered woman. I found strength in both my parents, but also the community around me. The Black women particularly, and the people in my church, both men and women, who propelled me, my teachers, who inspired me. And so you think these little small towns, but they're really like families. And the first time I had an opportunity to attend a conference in Washington, D.C., it cost $3,000. And it was $3,000 extra that my parents didn't have. But it was my community that came together that sold raffle tickets, they baked dinners and sold dinners to each other to raise the money to send me to this conference. And that was where I first met someone who became an early mentor in my life that actually gave me a chance to start my career in Washington. And so really growing up in that small town, being inspired, even something as small as when I was really young, I used to do Easter speeches. And, back in the day, your grandma was like, you better do that Easter speech on Sunday morning. You better know that Easter speech. And when I would get up and do those Easter speeches, I had a sense of pride in it. There was a little bit of fear because grandmama was like, you better do it right. But when I would do it, I would have this applause and people from all over would just come and see me do these Easter speeches. And that gave me a sense of just courage, and a sense of pride in an ability to speak. And that really launched my, ability to be a good, strong public speaker. And it was doing Easter speeches. And it was like, even, fast forward years later, when I was at the United Nations about to speak before the United Nations, I reverted back to that little girl about to give that Easter speech. And I thought about all of those people from my hometown that was cheering me on, that was smiling and saying, you can do it. And I felt that sense of pride and courage as I was just sort of shaking in my shoes before I was getting ready to go to the United Nations. And so if I could do it back in Johnsonville, in Florence County, I knew I could do it in Geneva, Switzerland at the United Nations.
It's absolutely true. Your story is truly amazing because as much as you had the family community, you decided to take a big risk when you were at university. You took this credit card. And then I think as much as you'd call it a risk, you also learned a valuable lesson because when you after getting a credit card in college, without telling your parents, you said you failed to pay back a purchase that ultimately sank you into credits and things. But you realize a valuable lesson there that the damages the credit card can do to us. What impact did this damage do to you, and how have you utilized that lessons you learned to today's knowledge?
It was a very important lesson. I took out that credit card. That purchase was a cruise on the big red boat. I don't regret the trip because we had a fabulous time on the big red boat. But it was like I think it was like a $400 cruise that our friends took. Um, and I didn't pay it back. My parents didn't know that I had this credit card. And it was very predatory at the time. You know, there were predatory lenders on college campuses across the United States offering credit cards to anyone who would take them in exchange for a frisbee or a t-shirt. And I got that credit card, and I made a poor decision of not paying back the credit card. Honestly, I didn't have a job, so I shouldn't have had the credit card in the first place. And as a result, my credit was sunk when I graduated from college. I mean, here I was the first Black woman student body president of my university. I had this really great job in the field that I cared about in activism, you know, as domestic program director, helping to abolish the death penalty across the United States. But I had poor credit to the point that I couldn't even get a company credit card. I could not get approved to get an apartment in DC alone. I got the house that I own today. I moved in this house. It's a duplex. I moved in upstairs as a renter, and it was only because the owner of the house then, who later would sell me this house, saw something in me, and he said, "I'm gonna give you a chance, even though your credit is really bad." And he gave me a chance. But what I realized is that so many people, because of predatory lending products, were in that same position, blocked out. Good people, people who were going to pay, people who had just made a mistake at one point in their life, but locked out of the ability for any kind of upward mobility, the ability to have access to credit in times of emergency. And that was a really important part of the work that I did in Silicon Valley, was to really combat predatory lending, and to use technology to really work against that.
No, absolutely. And but you made a big difference because I think utilizing the lessons you've learned, you're helping others. You also now describe as the Olivia Pope, with the work you do, by Forbes magazines, because of you really are out there helping people and doing a massive work in the policy changes and all of that. Can you tell us why you are described as the Olivia Pope?
Well, that term, it's kind of crazy because I started my career in advocacy and civil rights, and I actually had an interesting journey into tech in Silicon Valley. I actually was reluctant to go into tech in Silicon Valley. I didn't want to go into tech in Silicon Valley. The Olivia Pope of Silicon Valley, I always kind of chuckle. One, because I am a huge fan of just Kerry Washington, the actress who plays her, just as an individual, as an activist, as an advocate, but also the character of Olivia Pope always just gave me such motivation, because she really, she wore the white hat. She cared about, a greater cause, a greater good. And she was a well-connected, well-respected Black woman in Washington, D.C. So it was very humbling to me to be even referenced as an Olivia Pope. But I chuckle because I always say, well, I didn't do anything kind of illegal or dubious, but I was really someone focused on just being a connector. And I think that's how that terminology came. A writer, Ruben, a tech leader and an innovator himself, Ruben Harris, actually penned that in TechCrunch, and then Forbes and Fortune and other folks started kind of calling me that. And it's really because I kind of became known as someone in the industry as a connector who could really connect Silicon Valley back to Washington and states around the country and the movements, much like Olivia Pope did in terms of trying to move the needle forward, wearing the white hat, trying to, when needed, bring in the cavalry, and doing so with an amazing group of colleagues and friends who were just as committed as she was.
Your company, though, you have a company that now focuses on this, the full circle strategist. So that company really helps others. It is a political company, it's a consulting company. And you also focus on the social impact bits as well, helping making sure the voice that are much needed to be listened to are heard. How is your company achieving this? For example, as people looking to work with you or people who are looking for your help, what is your company? What does it really do to help others?
Well, full circle strategies. I often think about my life, and the name of my company speaks so much uh, to to
Yes.
my life. It's completely full circle because it has allowed me to take everything that I've been able to do, experience, and be blessed with, the people that I've met in life, and bring it all together full circle for the very single goal of creating transformative impact in this nation and the world, and particularly for communities that have been pushed to the margins. It goes back to those same people who helped me that very first time that I had an opportunity to go off to Washington and I didn't have that $3,000. So the work of my company is centered in those people, and centered in those communities, working with a wide array of nonprofits and government and corporate clients, to really focus on solving complex problems, but additionally, how do we actually drive impact? And so it's just a real honor. We've been growing. It's a blessing to work with a wide array of wonderful clients, from clients such as Nextdoor, who's doing really amazing work to creating platforms, to Goldman Sachs and the historic 1 Million Black Women Initiative, which is a $10 billion
Yeah.
investment to invest in Black women over the next 10 years to impact 1 million Black women, or working with impactful clients such as the KPOR Center, which is really looking at tech policy, and really driving greater inclusiveness into tech. So it's a wide array of clients, both tech and non-tech clients, to really help drive impact. And it's been beautiful. We've had the opportunity in partnership with other firms such as Values Partnerships to work with some that you would never dream to work with, like Oprah Winfrey and the Oprah Winfrey Network, to help drive voter engagement in this past election and beyond. So I love it every day. I wake up and I literally thank God for the ability to do what I feel like is really purpose-driven work. And I feel like I'm walking in my purpose. And that's a beautiful feeling, and a feeling that I hope that Black women and people everywhere have that feeling when they wake up in the morning.
Well, they could certainly have that feeling with your initiative, Win with Black Women hashtag. How is that formed and how is that going?
It's going. We're almost 1 year. August 1st will be 1 year. You know, and it started with an email. Literally, it started with an email on a
Win with Black Women. It's something.
it started with an email on a Saturday morning. I was watching CNN, and I heard the words, she's just too ambitious. And they were talking about now Vice President Kamala Harris. And then I heard them talking about Stacey Abrams, and she's doing too much. And then it was, Congresswoman Karen Bass. She's the anti-Kamala Harris. And then what did all these women have in common? They were all, mentioned as potential candidates for Vice President of the United States. And it was just watching the racism and the sexism cast against every last one of those highly qualified Black women. I just said enough. And I picked up the phone and I called my mentor and friend, Mignon Moore. And I was like, Mignon, what are you going to do? Have you talked to Donna, meaning Donna Brazil, Leah Daughtry? What's happening? And Mignon said, well, what are you going to do? And I hung up the phone after I thought about what she said. And I said, yep, it's time for me to act. Not, it's time for me to do something. So I sent out this email, and I still have the email, asking Black women to just get on a Zoom that night because it was time for us to come together and act. And I was able to pull from just years of knowing so many different Black women in various sectors. I had worked in Silicon Valley, so I could pull them in. The women in politics, I could pull them in. I could pull in women in the movement, my friends like Angela Ryan, Tamika Mallory, and Brittany Patnett Cunningham. I could pull in women in Hollywood, such as my friends Cassandra Butcher and Oscar winner Ruth Carter, and could bring in women from, tech, And all of those women, and including what was so special was to have, the elders join us, our legacy, such as Dr. Janetta Besh Cole and Dr. Hazel N. Dukes and Miss Cora Masters Berry, all of us get on that phone call that night, that Zoom. And from that moment on, we started organizing and we said enough. We put out an open letter that was signed by more than 3,000 Black women in the course of 48 hours. And we put out a loud statement that what will not happen, there will be no disrespect of Black women in this process. And further, that we state very clear that it is time for a Black woman to be at the top of this ticket. And then we were happy to see Vice President Kamala Harris named to that ticket. And we did the work as Black women across this country to ensure that we put that ticket over the cross line, that we helped make that historic moment. Black women working in their personal capacities, in their educational capacities, just across the board. And it has been a beautiful blessing. Our hashtag has been viewed more than 700 million impressions. We've made real impact, and there's still more work to be done. We still see the racism, we still see the sexism, we still see the attack on voting rights, and we still meet just about every Sunday night, united in our personal capacities, really to not only just lift up an agenda for Black women, but also to fellowship, because we truly believe that we win together. And winning together means just knowing who we are and knowing each other and being able to connect with each other and support each other in whatever capacity that we're leading.
Well, Joteica, this is amazing. I would let you go, but I have a final question for you. There's a lack of Black representation in the tech world. You've seen it in Silicon Valley. Most people think it's just white male in t-shirt, in jeans. That's what we think about. Let alone we don't think about having females there, let alone Black female. But you broke that mold. What would be your hope for Black women who are looking to advance into the tech space but still unsure about them fitting into that space?
My hope is that they do, the most important thing that they can do is get out of their own way and know that there is a place for them. That not only is there a place for Black women in tech and all these fields, but there is an absolute need for Black women. There's a need for Black women, whether or not you have a STEM or a tech background, or you're like me and have a non-traditional background. There is a role and a place for us. Tech is the future. Everything from how we turn our cars on, to what we watch on television, how we entertain ourselves, everything, the food that we order, it is based on a tech platform. And therefore, there is an absolute need and critical role for Black women to play in all of this. And so my hope is that we move out of our own way, take our rightful place, and we stand our ground and we take our rightful seat at all tables, not only in the tech industry, but in the political world, in the entertainment world, and in corporate America and across this country.
Wow, this is truly amazing. I know you're extremely busy. I'm so honored to have you have this conversation because you inspire so many, and the work you do is truly amazing. Thank you so much, Joteica, for this conversation.
Well, thank you so much, Anne. I love the work that you're doing, and it's been an honor to spend time with you today.
Thank you so much.